Welcome to Made It with Connor Tompkins.
Guys, I'm here with RT Custer. He's the CEO and founder of Vortic Watches. So we're going to be talking about something I'm passionate about watches. Like for me, I don't know if you think about it this way, but I think about it as like the memory business. A lot of memories are tied to watches. It's on your wrist. It's something that you give to someone as like a gift. And you guys really captured that, I think, with like the Instagram pieces that you guys produce and like the storytelling that you do around the watches. But you're also an entrepreneur, so you go through some crazy shit. And I love hearing about that. So I'm just going to hand it off to you. Do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And thanks again for having me. Happy to like we just said, talk about anything. My name is RT Custer. I run Vortic Inc. in Fort Collins, Colorado. Right now, that's Vortic Watch Company and Colorado Watch Company. Those are my two brands. As of yet, I plan to build a basically conglomerate of multifaceted brands and companies that are all in the American-made wristwatch space. I want to be the Swatch Group of American-made or the LVMH of Made in USA, if that makes sense. And I've been in the game for a little over 10 years. My business partner, original co-founder Tyler Wolf, and I started Vortic on Kickstarter November of 2014. I'm in the business of nostalgia. I take antique American pocket watches and turn them into one-of-a-kind wristwatches. Everything inside is old, everything outside is new. So if you know watches, we call it the dial, the hands, and the movement. Or if you can picture a watch, like a mechanical watch or a pocket watch, it's the guts of the pocket watch, all the inside, the face, the hands, and then all the gears and springs inside. We're taking the guts of that pocket watch and we're turning it into a wristwatch, and we call it Vortic, like Vortex and TikTok, a beautiful clash of old and new.
I love it. I think it's really fun. How did the launch go? So whenever you guys were going live 10 years ago, was the response good?
We had about 60 random humans from the internet pay, $700 to $900 a piece for these watches in the 30 days. So our goal on Kickstarter was 10,000 because right out of college, 10 grand was a lot of money. I was like, oh, if we can for sure start a company. And the goals are totally made up, right? So like we had on the whiteboard so we launched from the house that Tyler and I shared at that point. We were, like fresh out of college. We just moved to Fort Collins, Colorado. We both went to Penn State. That's where we met. And I came out here for a job with Walmart in logistics. I studied industrial engineering, focused on logistics, had a corporate job for a couple years. And so we launched this of like, hey, let's see if this works. We can make watches instead of having corporate jobs. That'd be cool. And yeah, the goal's like, okay, when we get to 10 grand, we're going to go out to a nice dinner basically. And we made it. When we get to 50 grand in Kickstarter raise, we're going to do XYZ. We had it, I think, all the way up to like $1 million. Like we thought we're going to be like Pebble on Kickstarter and raise $1 million. And yeah, we stalled out at 30 something and ended at about 41,000, which was enough to prove at least the start of product market fit, mostly because it was just random people on the internet buying a product that we had super glued together. And really they were investing in me and Tyler saying like, hey, we want to make watches in America. And that's really the thing. Or they thought the whole idea of a pocket watch turned into a wristwatch was just a good idea. And they thought we should, continue to try.
One of the things I like is you were telling me that you had enough bandwidth to produce like a watch a day, but you almost made it a marketing strategy too. So you guys publish a watch a day on social media, and then you get people opting in saying like, yeah, super, super cool. I might want to sign up for one of these. I think it's a fun way to kind of take something that's more of like a barrier and make it more of a marketing strategy.
That was actually, there's a story behind that. So back in 2018, 2019, you could go to vorticwatches.com and you could see the watch builder. And that's what we called it, where you could select the 100-year-old pocket watch face that you wanted and then choose the case. Did you want steel, titanium, bronze? It was a photo layering system that we built with our Shopify expert. And we were like, all right, you got to design a custom watch, and then then you order it, you pay in full up front, and it would take 4 to 6 months to make. And for probably 2017 to 19, that was 80% of our revenue. And it was great and people loved it. Pandemic hits. First of all, I was like, oh crap, nobody's going to buy any watches. It's a global pandemic. So I was ready to pivot. And second of all, and thank God people bought watches. People bought more watches in 2020 and 2021 than like ever. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Everyone's at home and
massive spike. It was awesome. But nobody, whether it was the Amazon effect or the pandemic and the fear of just like what's tomorrow hold, nobody wanted to wait 4 to 6 months for a watch, and nobody wanted to pay in full upfront for it. And so, to your point, I did the math and I was like, well, we're averaging about 1 watch a day as far as production goes. So let's just flip the switch on this thing and say, hey, instead of offering custom watches, let's just let my watchmakers decide what they think is cool. And we'll just make one watch a day. We'll take photos of it. We'll list it on the website. And every single day at that point, 7 days a week, today it's Monday through Friday, there's a new watch, a watch of the day. And yeah, 2020 through basically 2022, we were sold out every single one for years. It was nuts.
The cool thing about these watches is that you have that dial, like you have that on the top, right? It's very iconic. It's very easy to see, right? That's used to be a pocket watch, right? Like I love the old school like Omega watches or the old school like Hamilton watches that you see from back in the day.
Like I said, we sell nostalgia, right? So it's like you look at these pocket watches that were made 100 years ago, and they don't make them like they used to, right? The designs, the fonts, the colors, the patina, right? We in the watch industry we call it patina, but it's rust. Like these things are 100 years old, and so they've rusted. And there's some of them it's like they're missing a number, but it's like that's cool. Last year we sold one that was missing the number 5, and I was like, oh, this is perfect for an entrepreneur. It's 5 o'clock somewhere / 5 o'clock, doesn't matter. We're still working. Somebody's going to buy this. And yeah, it sold like right away. People got that story. There's just so many stories inside the face of the watch, like all the guts of it too. But then to your point, we call it the crown or the winding knob at the 12 o'clock, position all the way at the top of the watch. And that winding knob or the crown is just where it was on the pocket watch, right? Like we're just taking that pocket watch, turning it into a wristwatch. That's where the engineering stays. That's where you wind it. And yeah, you have to wind these things about once a day, which also just kind of takes you back, to a time. This is before batteries. Some of these things are made before electricity was a thing. So that's mind blowing in itself.
You were talking about your co-founder. So you had a co-founder 10 years ago and you guys did this for 10 years. What was the reason for the split? It seemed like it happened pretty recently.
I bought Tyler out of Vortic in October of 2024. So it was almost a full 10 years of business partnership. And technically we started Vortic back in college when we were at Penn State with 4 co-founders. Mm-hmm. So by the time we actually got the business going and like got it off the ground, it was just me and him. You know how college goes. And we had the idea on a golf course. There was 4 of us and then there was 2, right? So it's just kind of like, that's how it goes.
But it's also something that's not talked about often, right? So like,
sure.
You usually hear about like the success bias. You usually hear about the things that made it and the co-founders that went the distance, but you don't often hear about like normally there's 2 or 4 people involved in a project, and for different people at different stages, they need to make sure that the company makes sense for them. 10 years is a long time. Like that's
for sure.
For our business partnership, it's a good long run.
He was my longest relationship. I knew him longer than I know my spouse now. And that's what it is. Like a business partnership is basically a marriage. And when I bought his ownership of the company and when he moved back to Pennsylvania from Colorado here, it was basically like getting divorced. You sign papers and there's money exchanged and you have to figure out like, what do we call each other? How often do we talk now? I've never been divorced and I hope I don't ever experience that. I know what that's like through stories. Yeah. And it's very similar. It was very amicable. We had a lot of very difficult conversations. And, just like a marriage, business partnership is the culmination of all the conversations you should or didn't have for that long. And so that's really what became kind of the issue over the last few years is like he ran manufacturing and I run sales, marketing, finance. I'm CEO. He's always been like chief manufacturing officer, COO. And we were kind of ships in the night for the last few years, just try to figuring out what we were supposed to do. We launched our new brand, Colorado Watch Company, with the idea of growing. And it worked, but it was very difficult, and there was a lot of roadblocks in there. And it just kind of came down to like, I got another 10 years in me. I see this company growing to hundreds of millions in revenue and thousands of employees. And he wasn't excited about those numbers and those things. And that's okay, And so that was kind of like the culmination of some of those hard conversations of just like, hey, what's okay is that we're having the conversation. We can be on different pages and we can have different opinions for like where the business goes, as long as we talk it through and find a solution that doesn't harm our customers, that doesn't harm our employees. And again, it's kind of like a divorce where it's like, I got the kids, right? Like, and I mean that in the nicest way. I love my employees. I love these people that are here. I personally own the building that I'm sitting in that, we use for our commercial space and our manufacturing space. And so in that analogy, I got the house too. And there's, massive pros and cons to that. He's still doing what he's passionate about. He's making stuff out of metal. Like that was his skill that he learned, using CNC machines. And he got one of our machines in the deal. He took it home and he's going to use that to start his own business and do something else. And that's awesome. And here I am picking up the pieces, moving forward, and now I'm running 2 watch companies. And I mean, it took me 3 full-time people to replace just him. That's probably the thing people don't talk about, is like when you're a co-founder and you're a partner and you have equity in a company, the amount of work that you do and then don't really get paid much for is ridiculous. He was COO, chief engineer, designed all the products, redesigned the processes that didn't work, managed most of the team. And so I had to hire an operations manager, a watchmaker, and 2 engineers, which is like, and some of those are part-time. So it's like, it's the equivalent of 3 FTEs or full-time people. The way I described it to my investors is like, for the last 6 months or so, I've been kind of, I feel like a turnaround CEO in some ways, where it's like I'm turning around my own business. Like I'm coming in and I'm just like, I'm making all these changes. I'm doing all these things. It's really exciting for me. It's fun. I got a bunch of new people in the building, and I'm a people person. I'm extroverted. I love this stuff. But also, the last 10 years running a company with Tyler and with all these people and trying to figure out how to make watches in America, this has been the longest, most expensive master's in business and engineering I could possibly buy. At the same time, you could look at it like that, or you could say, man, like I know so much now. There's so much in front of me. And I think the next 10 years are going to be so fun.
So share a little bit about, where's the company at now? How much revenue are you guys at? How many employees do you guys have? Where do you guys want to be in the next 3 years?
So I switched from Vortic LLC to a Colorado LLC to a C Corp, a Delaware C Corp.
Yeah.
So that I could build out multiple brands under one like umbrella. And now we have Vortic Watch Company and Colorado Watch Company. Those are our 2 brands. Vortic Watch Company, we can only make about 400 watches a year. It's very difficult to turn a pocket watch into a wristwatch. And so our revenue streams are very simple. We have watch of the day, hopefully 7 days a week at some point. Right now, 5 days a week. So let's do the math on 5 days a week. That's 250 roughly watches a year. About $4,000 to $5,000 a watch in general. And then we have our military edition that is only available on Veterans Day. And that's a World War II pocket watch that we turn into a wristwatch just once a year, 1 day a year. Those are going to be $11,000 this year. So that could be, last year was almost a $500,000 day. And then we have our service called Convert Your Watch, where somebody sends in their grandpa's pocket watch and we turn it into a wristwatch, or I loop custom watches into that. And we probably do 1 to 2 of those a week. So when you round it all up, round it all out, it's about 400 watches a year at, let's say, $5,000 a piece. The probable max revenue, or like average revenue, that Vortic will do for the next 10 years is about $2 million.
This is like part of the reason for the move to Colorado Watch Company, right?
Yeah.
You're like this really steady performer. It's a fun business. It gets a lot of traction. And then you were talking more about like American made, and that's like a big trend now, right? People are talking about how do you build more stuff in the United States. There's all that stuff happening with tariffs, and Canada's not so happy with us right now, right? So then, like, how do you build a watch in the United States when it hasn't been done in like the last 50 years, right?
And a Vortic watch is 100% American made. People ask me all the time about the tariffs and all this stuff, and like none of that stuff impacts us at all. We do almost everything here domestically, and most of it's done right here in Colorado even. So that's the American dream, right? Like over the last 10 years, I built a 7-figure business that can pay me 6 figures, that can employ a good number of American jobs. I own the building here. We're checking every box. For a lot of people, that's it. That's good. Like I could just sit here and do that.
Hey, podcast listeners. This podcast is brought to you by Pineview Insurance Group. When I sold my company, I wasn't really sure what I should be doing. I started buying a rental property. I started buying a car, and I didn't really know what I needed to do from an insurance standpoint. But that stuff is very, very important. Me and a lot of my founder friends, after we're selling a business, we have no idea what we should be doing insurance-wise, and that's where Pineview Insurance Group comes in. So after selling his insurance company for $435 million, Mike Lloyd started this new company. I highly recommend it. It really does an audit on your assets and tells you what you should be investing in terms of insurance. So this is everything from your auto, your home, your umbrella policy, and much, much more. So if you guys are curious about working with an insurance group that's geared towards entrepreneurs, I recommend Pineview. You can get access to Pineview's new member waitlist at pvig.com/made it. Again, that's pvig.com/made it. Cheers, guys. We have a lot of people on the podcast, and some of these are like moonshots, and it's great. And I'm happy for them that it worked out, right? But also, like when we were talking earlier, you're like, this is what I'm working on, and this is my team, and there's that ownership there. And it seems like in that longer term vision piece where you're building a life around the company in a way, right?
So I could have a nice little lifestyle business here. And really one of the things that Tyler and I talked about a lot that makes me different is that having a $2 million profitable business, rinse and repeat for the next 10 years, sounds like hell to me. The most boring thing I can possibly think of. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of great businesses, and you can do that. And America needs millions of people that are doing that. And that is awesome. But that is not me. I want scale. I want growth. I want multiple buildings. I want to have 1,000 employees. I want to learn what it's like to manage a person who manages a person who manages a person who manages a person, right? That sounds so fun. And that's really what I'm interested in, is having fun. And we can accidentally make a lot of money on the way to having fun. And that's really what I try to do. So we started another brand, and that's Colorado Watch Company, and it's delusional as hell. We're trying to make watches in America at scale. I'm talking thousands, hopefully tens of thousands of watches, just like the big Swiss watch companies, but made in USA. And yeah, it's very, very hard, but gosh, is it fun.
How is Colorado doing so far? So like, are you guys targeting big retail stores? Are you guys doing mostly e-commerce, working with influencers? What are the strategies behind getting this brand off the ground?
We are going to do all of those things. Right now, we're solving the hardest problem, which is setting up the infrastructure for manufacturing hundreds of watches a month. So I'm probably at 75 watches a month today as far as like total capacity of what we can make as far as all the parts. I have about 400 watches pre-sold. I'm taking pre-orders on the website, which is, we talked about earlier, difficult. People want instant gratification. People don't want to pre-order things. So it's kind of a hard sell right now. Yeah. About 3 months from now, I will have almost one of every option in stock, ready to ship tomorrow. And about 6 months from now, I should have hundreds of every option, every SKU or variant, if you want to call them that, in stock, ready to go. And we'll be hitting the pavement, going to retail stores. I'm trying to get to 500 watches a month in total production capacity by the end of this year. And my target is to sell 75% or have a 75% sell-through rate. And then 40% of those, so 40% of the 75%, would be through retail stores. And it's one of my board members used to run a chain of jewelry stores and watch stores. And so I sat down with him and we were just like, all right, let's map this out. How many watches per store can we sell? Like, what's realistic? What's the minimum order that I should do for stores? What margin do they get? What are the first 100 stores I should pitch? Who cares about American made in the retail store space, and how should I get into them? So yeah, we have this detailed plan, and I'm actively raising capital to fund inventory and marketing and all the stuff we just talked about.
What do you call this? Like a Series A off the combined entities? Like, where is this at for you?
I called it a Series A for the new C Corp, the combined entities. And the good thing about watches is that once we get to scale, at scale, thousands of watches a year, when you have a profitable business, there's a lot of margin in watches. And so if you're doing it right, yes, you might have a fair amount of inventory, but that inventory are solid assets that you can either lend against or use to grow. And so in theory, we won't need to raise a whole lot of capital. We can be very bankable. This is a manufacturing company. It's not a tech company. It's not a SaaS company. It's very, very different. And so I'm working with a lot of hard assets and physical products. And, we can be a really flexible supply chain because it's almost all done in-house. I have the big CNC machines right here that I'm cutting the metal. So if one product is selling better than another, I'm just like, hey, let's make that part instead of this part. And we pivot a little bit. That's really what people are investing in, is the flexible supply chain and the ability to maneuver quickly, even as a manufacturing company.
One thing I didn't understand was you said that you got sued, like you were part of a lawsuit. What was the thing that raised a flag for them?
Yeah, so the lawsuit's called Hamilton v. Vortic, and Hamilton is a brand that's owned by the Swatch Group. They have about 30 brands now, massive multi-billion-dollar foreign conglomerate based in Switzerland. The original Hamilton watch company started in the late 1800s and operated until 1969, all out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And they made some of the best pocket watches, mostly in the world, in Pennsylvania. That was the original brand. They went under in 69. They were purchased, the brand, the trademark and all the assets were purchased in 1972 by a holding company that then became the Swatch Group. Swatch's largest brand is Omega, for reference. You know, Omega does millions of dollars in sales. They're the James Bond watch. They're the watch that went to the moon, right? And Swatch is the original Swatch from the 70s. You know, a lot of people are listening to this. They're like, oh, yeah, it was a $20 Swatch. That company became this massive conglomerate. Long story short, they own Hamilton. And Hamilton, to your point, it's a great brand. They're making millions of watches a year. They're selling them for, I don't know, $500 to a couple $1,000s a piece. They're in all kinds of retail stores. And they accused us of trademark infringement and counterfeiting. And basically, what they accused us of is, you know, we're taking a Hamilton pocket watch, or really any pocket watch, right? There was a bunch of different brands: Hamilton, Elgin, Illinois, Waltham. I call them the Great American Watch Companies.
Okay.
A small percentage of them, probably about 10%, were made by Hamilton in Pennsylvania. Okay. We're taking a Hamilton pocket watch. I'm taking the guts of it, including the face or the dial, which still says Hamilton on it, because I'm not editing that, right? It still says Hamilton on it. It's 100 years old. And I'm building that pocket watch into a wristwatch. So legally, you could look at the first use doctrine. You could look at upcycling. You could call it art. There's a lot of different ways we could have defended ourselves. But I was a kid and we got sued. We got the cease and desist 6 months after we launched on Kickstarter. So this is like May, June of 2015. Wow, that was fast. Yep. We put an ad in Watch Time magazine, the biggest magazine in the space, right after Kickstarter, and then immediately got a cease and desist from the largest company in the industry. And they thought, basically, trademark infringement and counterfeiting, we were, quote unquote, using their name to make money. And that's fair, you know, at first glance. But if you know anything about watches, and if you've been listening to all the stuff I just talked about, like, we're taking a pocket watch, turning it into a wristwatch. It's very different. It's very niche. At that point, we still hadn't made a single watch. We were still doing custom, made to order. I hadn't shipped a single product to a single customer yet. Like I said, I was a kid. I didn't know how to do this.
Kid, that's terrifying. Like, how old? Yeah. Like 22, 23?
Yeah, but 23 probably at that point.
Yeah, that's terrifying. That's not a good time.
Yeah. And I sent a letter to the CEO of the Swatch Group, runs a $1 billion company. And I just said, hey, like, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to do. I will come to you anywhere in the world, anytime you name a time and place. I want to put my product in your hands, show you that what I do, I think, is actually helping your brand. I'm telling the stories of history of the Hamilton Watch Company. And I got a response from the chief legal officer of the Swatch Group that basically said, the letter you wrote was just as much of a waste as the postage you used to send it here.
Oh, snap.
And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'll get an attorney. And so I got an attorney. They slapped me on the wrist because they were like, yeah, you can't do that. That's
not respond directly to the guy. Right?
Yeah, step one is don't do that. So I was like, oh, well, I probably made it worse. And then we got an official lawsuit started in federal court in the Southern District of New York in July of 2017. I went through 2 or 3 attorneys in the process of just trying to figure out how to survive, you know, through all that stuff. And in the meantime, we're still making watches, you know, like the whole time I was like, we're not doing anything wrong, so we're not going to stop. It was May of 2019. So I'm about to have my second child. I went to a settlement conference that the Swatch Group no-showed. So we were sitting down with a federal judge in New York City. I got there, my attorneys are there, everyone's there, and they no-showed it, which is a big deal. Like, they got a slap on the wrist, they got a fine, they got all this stuff. But my attorneys at that time quit because they were just like, hey, clearly they're just trying to shut you down. You know, this is not worth fighting. We can't keep working for free. We're sorry. We recommend you explore other options. And what they meant is file bankruptcy and try something else. So I'm sitting in the parking lot of my office. I just came back from New York, and I Google best Colorado bankruptcy attorney, because basically everyone else in my life had given up. And I was just like, well, let me at least see what this looks like. Called the first one, spoke to someone named Rob Lance, and Rob turned the whole thing around.
What did he do?
He said, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is I'm not the type of bankruptcy attorney you were looking for. I'm the type of attorney that if a big company falsely files for bankruptcy, I go after them and try to, hold up the law and make sure that they're using bankruptcy in the right way. The good news is, though, my partner here at the firm is an expert in trademark law, and I love a good David and Goliath story. So we got you. The next day, he was in Denver. He drove up to Fort Collins up here in Colorado. We sat down. We spent a whole day. We made a plan. I didn't pay that man a cent for like a year. We went to federal court in February of 2020. Not the best time to be in Manhattan. And I got to say my piece to the judge. I literally took my watch off. We're in this massive courtroom. Took my watch off, handed it to the judge, told our whole story. He told me, he said, whatever you do, do not stop talking. You never did anything wrong. You need the judge to hear your whole story, because she will see what's happening right in front of her, which is big company doesn't want small company to do the things small company's doing, and small company never did anything wrong.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
That's what I did. And I told the whole story. 6 months later, that Judge Nathan, wrote a 40-page ruling, like this massive document, basically trying to protect me, because it was one of the judges in the process. They said, this is an interesting case, meaning that there was no other cases that are similar. And she said, you do not want to be the defendant in an interesting case, because it means you have to go all the way. It means we need the law. Somebody's got to write the law down and say, is it okay to upcycle? Is it okay to take something that has some other brand on it, turn it into something else, and sell it for 3-4 times more?
You see people tattooing Gucci handbags, right, to make them a piece of art. You see someone taking a Tecovas boot or belt and branding it different ways, right? You see this everywhere.
And some of them are flying under the radar. Some of them have licensing deals that we just don't know about. They got permission. And some of them get the attention of the big company and get sued.
Yeah.
And most of those people go out of business or can't afford to defend themselves. And that's why I like telling the story, because I feel like in most David and Goliath stories, the David gets snuffed out. Either they go out of business or there's some kind of legal reason they can't tell the story. And for me, there's nothing, because we won. We almost made it to the Supreme Court with this thing. They stopped after years, 6 years long. They just stopped and gave up after the appellate court.
Hey guys, this episode of the Made It podcast is brought to you by our friends at Build, spelled BYLDD. Build is a development agency that specializes in helping early stage startups, especially non-technical founders and teams, build and launch scalable revenue generating software products. Most startups don't have $100K to hand over to a big agency, and honestly, for your first product, you probably shouldn't. Sure, you can try to roll the dice with some freelancers on Upwork, but that's a gamble with unclear costs and a lot of project management headaches and no guarantees. That's where Build comes in. For just $10K in about a month, Build can turn your validated idea into a product that's ready to go to market. It's a smart, efficient way to build a foundation for a company of any size. Their clients have gone on to be backed by Y Combinator and Google and have raised funding in the multi-million-dollar valuations. Ready to get started? Head over to build.com. Again, that's build, BYLDD.com. Connect with Ayush and let them know that you heard about Build on the Made It podcast. Cheers. I started a dog genetics company with Ryan, Adam, and a few other people that came here, right? And so the idea is that you swap the dog's cheek and you send it in. And the only other person that was doing this was a company called Wisdom Panel. And they're owned by Mars Corp. So the M&M,
Mars,
big country, right? Big dog food, right? And so we're working out a co-working space. We don't even have enough money to have an office.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even have a product. We just have a chip that can process genetic information that's working with another big company that has a monopoly on the space called Illumina out of California. And somehow they heard about it, and somehow they sent us a cease and desist saying this is our IP, but their IP was so overly broad and their interpretation was even more so, right? But we were able to kind of push through, and we started in November, went live in March. We're on Good Morning America, and we survived. But how many people see that stuff and then they're like, I'm out, I'm done.
Oh, for sure. And the amount of attorneys and people with legal backgrounds that told me to quit, that just straight, they heard the story and they were just like, wow, give up today, right now. Why are you still fighting? Like they were just like, hey, why don't maybe just don't use the Hamilton pocket watches, maybe just stick with the Elgins or the Walthams or whatever. But like on principle, if it was illegal to take a Hamilton pocket watch and turn it into a wristwatch, it would then be illegal to take a Elgin or a Waltham or a Rolex pocket watch and turn it into a wristwatch. By taking this all the way through, now anyone, anywhere can take any pocket watch, regardless of what brand it is, and put it into a wristwatch, which is awesome. Obviously still very small niche, but now there's legal precedent. So Hamilton v. Vortic is in multiple legal textbooks now, and it's been cited in lots of different lawsuits since, like wristwatch lawsuits and jewelry lawsuits for stuff like you're talking about, where somebody's using someone else's brand to make money. And it's similar. And they were like, well, if it was okay for Vortic to do that, we think it's probably okay for, you know, this other little company to do that with the Gucci brand or whatever. And that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is just like my total delusion or pride or ego or whatever kept me going. And that's really cool. So the idea behind Vortic was, how do we make a watch in America? And that's how we got to the old pocket watches, because nobody made, you know, movements or the guts, the gears and springs of everything in the United States. And fast forward 10 years, now there's a company down in Arizona assembling watch movements, modern automatic movements in the USA. So now for Colorado Watch Company, we can use an American assembled automatic movement, and we can make almost everything else, all the other metal parts and stuff like that on the outside of the wristwatch in Colorado. And so we're about 50% made in Colorado and about 85% by cost American, which makes us the most American made watch at scale. And I put all of that on the website because, in my opinion, it's not enough to just tell you this information. I need to show you. I need to say, hey, we have an open door policy. You can come to Colorado. You can see how it's made. You can see I'm cutting the metal. You don't have to believe me. Let me show you exactly how I make this watch. Because in my opinion, that's what a lot of these other companies, even companies that say they make things in America, they don't have that. You know, they don't have the video to back it up. And so I'm just like, here you go. Here's an exploded view on the website. Here's where every single part and piece is made. And I know for a fact my customers really appreciate that, and they think it's cool, and it makes the watch even more of a conversation piece.
How do we go all the way? Do you think it's possible? Are you planning on building the pieces that you're going to send over to FTS so that way they can assemble like a fully American movement?
We're at 85% American by cost right now. And I do percentages because that's how Swiss made works. So to be a watch that's made in Switzerland, you need to be 60% of the cost needs to come from Switzerland. Okay. The definition of made in USA is very weird. And so I have to add a qualifier. So I just say it's 85. It's made in USA with 15% or less foreign components. And that way I'm very specific about it. To get to 100%, first of all, it's a huge financial, like capital investment. There are machines that you need to make some of these parts that just aren't here. But the harder thing, Connor, is the labor. And it's the will of the people to do this here. And all of this is the skilled trades. I don't know if you follow Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy. Yeah. But Mike Rowe talks about this a lot and has talked about this very recently and in a big way. Do we as a country, like, are we willing to work with our hands? Are we willing to roll up our sleeves and do these manufacturing jobs? Are we willing to do what those guys down in FTS in Arizona are doing, where it's like, okay, we need to assemble 1,000 of the same thing every month on repeat forever. That's what I need. I need thousands of these movements. That's just assembly. Now you talk about literal manufacturing. We're cutting metal. Some of it can be automated with machines, but a lot of this stuff is done in China because the labor is so cheap. And there's a lot of people in other countries that are willing to roll up their sleeves and work with their hands all day, every day, and not complain about whether it's 8 or 10 hours a day. And so, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's really the bigger problem that we're about to face, is if you want to make stuff in America, it's not just enough to say it. It's not just enough to buy the machines and create the jobs. We need to have the people that sit in those seats and actually fill those jobs. So that's my fear. But to answer your question, I think it's possible. And I'm shooting for 1% a year for 15 years. I think it'll take 15 years. We can get to 100%.
I mean, that's pretty cool. If you were to ask me before us talking, like if we could build a 100% made in the United States watch with an American movement, I would say, yeah, like
We can. One person could do it. And there are people that are making everything here.
but not at scale.
They're making one. At
Right.
scale is the kicker here. And to me, scale is thousands. Elon talks about this a lot. And like, it was hard to make the first Tesla. It was really hard to make a few hundred of them so that they could test them. And it was next to impossible to make thousands of them. And now it's like you're in the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, that now you're making millions of the same thing in mass production. People don't talk about that because most people have never done that. And it's ridiculously difficult.
It's honestly mind blowing. It's really hard to do that for one company, let alone also like do rockets and Starlink and stuff like that.
The thing that I'm trying to do is study history. And I love, obviously, we're taking pocket watch, turning wristwatch. Like I love history. I love talking about the history of these things. Back in the mid 1800s, Waltham Watch Company, they were called the Scientific Watch. And allegedly, that's the company that Henry Ford studied when he was trying to figure out how to build the manufacturing lines for Ford. Because Waltham Watch Company, and it's correctly pronounced Waltham, because it's still called Watch City. It's right outside of Boston. But that company was making millions. I mean, in their lifespan between like 1850-ish and 1950 or so, Waltham Watch Company made over 40 million mechanical movements in the same factory right outside of Boston. They were pumping them out with mostly, I mean, in the mid 1800s, like they literally had a steam engine on the side of the plant. There was a giant piston that ran down the plant, and they worked in the daylight. When it got dark, you couldn't work because you couldn't see the thing. We have artificial intelligence and CNC machines that I can program with G code to just cut metal all day and never complain. And I still can't do that. So what did they have that we didn't? And that's why it keeps coming back to like the will, right? Like they had a lot of people willing to work. So I have plenty of people that are willing to work. Every job that I have gets filled right away. Like, until I get to scale, I'm not too worried about that.
I hope that there's reason for optimism. You can actually make a pretty decent living as like a watchmaker.
Oh,
so like
great living.
Yeah. Like what's the average salary for a watchmaker?
The bigger problem there is there's not very many schools. Like it's hard to learn how to become a watchmaker.
Yeah.
The one that I support is called the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative. They're in Delaware, and they teach U.S. military vets how to be watchmakers. So perfect. Stars align there. I use that watch that we make, the military edition, just once a year to support that school. For instance, that school is free. It's 2 years. You go to school, you learn how to be a watchmaker in 2 years, totally free. And out of school, you could expect to make basically a starting salary for like a mechanical engineer. So let's call it 50 to 75,000, probably, like right out of a 2-year school that was totally free.
Yeah.
The other schools are owned by like Swatch, Rolex, all those things, and they work in the same way you might think, where you go to school for a couple of years and you basically have to go work for those brands. There's another school down in Paris, Texas, that is one of the only independent schools, and they're trying to grow too. But I mean, that Mike Rowe talks about that a lot too. It's like you can make really good money as a plumber, as an electrician, as a skilled tradesman.
I think it's coming back. People are trying to figure out, how do you buy these businesses? How do you buy businesses that actually make things? Because
For sure.
software is getting easier to build. The multiples aren't as high as they used to be. And I'm seeing crazy high multiples on plumbing companies and roofing companies. And
yeah, the roll-ups in those industries are fun.
Really, really high right now. So it's interesting to see that there might be a pivot, right? Because information work is changing.
Yep.
So you either have to be at the pinnacle of information work, or you have to go back to like building something that's physical and tangible, that's harder to recreate, that has more of a moat.
And there is a massive moat around watches because these are tiny, tiny little parts that have to be perfect every single time. So even when they do the humanoid robots and stuff like that, I think the moat around this physical labor and that skilled trade is massive. And that's for manufacturing modern watches. Then you get into vintage watch restoration.
Yeah.
Vintage watches are super popular. If your dad or grandfather has a Rolex sitting in the safe deposit box, go get that thing out and sell that thing, because that is worth a fortune. Or better yet, keep it forever because it's an heirloom. But crazy, if you want to get that worked on right now, you pretty much have to send it to Switzerland and just hope that they get it and hope that they also get your $1,000 check to do it. I think there's a huge opportunity for watchmakers and people just even fix the old stuff, and keep the old stuff around because, again, they don't make them like they used to. So might as well keep those working too. People ask all the time is like, well, what about the Apple Watch? What about technology? Like, do people still need a watch today? Like, back to where we started, like, we sell nostalgia. I sell something you don't need. I sell something you want. Like, it's so cool. It's a little engine on your wrist. And what's fun is the answer to that question is like this next generation, young people now, they're starting to wear watches, their Apple Watches or their pieces of tech, but they're starting to wear it in their, teenage years or early 20s. And then by the time they get through college, they get their first, real good paycheck or whatever. They're like used to wearing something on their wrist, but now they want something nicer. And that's where I'm going with Colorado Watch Company. I think it can be the first good watch for the generation that's coming up that also wants to support American made. That's really my niche, is like, if you want to buy a really good quality watch and you want to support a made in USA company, the only option is Colorado.
I'm excited to see what you do with it, RT, and let me know about the fundraise.
One of the investors or potential investors I just talked to is just like, I can own a piece of a watch company for less than I spent on my last watch.
And that's kind of crazy to think about, right?
It's crazy. Yeah. Well, and then it's also crazy that there are watches for, hundreds of thousands of dollars that some people have dozens of. Some of these watches are they're either investments or they're one of a kind masterpieces made in Switzerland by like one person start to finish, which is spectacular. But I'm more excited about made in USA and creating jobs and going to scale. Scale is more fun for me.
Where should people go to find you?
So if you want to chat with me, I am on Instagram, X, and LinkedIn, all as RT Custer, like Robert Thomas, Custer. And then vorticwatches.com, V as in Victor, ORTIC watches.com is our pocket watches turned into wristwatches. And then we also have coloradowatchcompany.com.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited. Guys, check out RT, check out Vortic, check out Colorado Watch Company. To the moon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That wraps up today's episode. For more inspiring stories and valuable lessons from successful entrepreneurs, be sure to listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and writing your next chapter.